Hello, and welcome to the latest in our series of podcasts on neurodiversity in business. My name is Dan Harris. I am the CEO and founder in Parliament on the 22nd of March 2022, and we've been delighted with both the volume of high profile organisations who have joined us, but also on the quality and calibre and intellectual powerhouses that are on our co-production board and our advisory board. And with that in mind, I'm really pleased to welcome here today Tumi Sotire, who is a friend, first of all, and second of all, he's a leading figure on our co-production board. Tumi is a health economist at the University of Newcastle and is also very well known across social media as the Black Dyspraxic. Welcome, Tumi. How are you doing today?
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm so happy to be here. Neurodiversity in business is doing an amazing job. We need as many corporates to be involved in this as possible. And it's doing just an incredible job for the ND community at large. I'm very pleased to be part of it.
Great. Well, Tumi, we're a lot stronger for having people like yourself as leading lights in this organisation. So, Tumi, can I just talk about the dyspraxia term first of all, because across the neurodiversity ecosystem, that's probably one of the topics which is less well understood than potentially autism or dyslexia, etc. So, would you mind just telling us a little bit about dyspraxia and what it is?
Yes, certainly. So dyspraxia used to be known as clumsy child syndrome, and now some in some medical circles it's known as developmental coordination disorder. And so if you think about the prefix, this means difficulty, and praxia means action. And
Right.
what that's to do with is difficulties with fine and gross motor skills. So when we talk about fine motor skills, we're talking about holding a pen, doing buttons. Gross motor skills are maybe running or swimming or riding a bike, for example. But dyslexia is a lot more to do with than just coordination. The same way dyslexia is a lot more to do with than just reading. So dyspraxia involves things like self-esteem, well-being, for example, the ability to process information, the ability to organize thoughts, and it's something like all the other ND conditions. It's not something that you grow out of. I was diagnosed with dyspraxia at the age of 4, so it's something that I've been aware of for a long time.
Great. That's really helpful to me. And I thought it's important to start with that because, unfortunately, unless we have good understanding, it's very hard to build awareness and then acceptance, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Um, but as you rightly said, it's one of the ugly ducklings of the ND community. And what I mean by that, like for example, dyspraxia, Tourette's, these are conditions that are less known. They're less popular than autism and ADHD, but there's still quite um there's still a lot of us in the population. So it's important that we talk about these conditions.
Great. Well, look, to me, challenge accepted. As well as doing dyspraxia today, we'll make sure that our next one covers Tourette's because I think you're right. It's really important that we focus on those people who are even marginalised within the ND community, which itself is marginalised.
Absolutely. And
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about your academic career because you've got a high powered job as a health economist. Tell us more about what that entails.
okay, so health economics. What I do right now is I when a um when a therapeutic or medication is produced by a pharmaceutical company, for it to be approved in the UK by the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, the drug companies have to prove that not only is it clinically effective, but they also need to prove that it's cost effective,
Right.
i.e., it's worthwhile for the NHS to to purchase this drug for society, and
Great.
then that's what I do. So
Cool.
I'm kind of helping that process.
Excellent. Great. And can you just tell me on the topic of dyspraxia again? Obviously, as you and I know, that there is a significant amount of co-occurring conditions within the neurodiversity spectrum. And Professor Amanda Kirby says this probably best in terms of the overlap between people who are autistic and ADHD and dyslexic and other conditions. Is there also an associated overlap for people who are dyspraxic?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. It's so a lot of people that are dyspraxia have dyspraxia also have dyslexia as well.
Okay, okay, understood.
For example, but you get people that are autistic, dyslexic, and dyspraxic, for example. So it's all part of the communities as well.
Got it, got it, understood. Okay, great. And let's go on to some kind of contentious topics in our community. There's a lot of debate at the moment around kind of the inclusivity around neurodiversity, and how do we ensure that we recognise that that kind of intersectionality, right? So you're well known in social media as the Black Dyspraxic, and I think what we've seen over the recent decades is that certain groups, whether that's based on ethnicity, race, sexuality, and gender within the ND community, are further marginalised. So I'd love to hear your perspective on kind of the whole point around privilege and access to diagnosis, first of all, and how that manifests itself in the education system, and then that potentially then limits certain people from education leading into employment.
This is that's a massive, massive topic. How long do you have? So first of all, let's talk about diagnosis. People from less socioeconomical backgrounds um, who are often of a different ethnicity are less likely to be diagnosed.
Right.
And for example, those people from underprivileged backgrounds are normally, for example, less likely to, they're more likely to be in schools where services for special need communities have been cut off due to austerity,
Right.
and so they're less likely to be diagnosed. Also, in the adult community, um, you have to pay for your diagnosis. You can't do it under the NHS, and this kind of out of pocket expenditure is expensive for the average person. You know, and you're talking diagnosis that is just really expensive. And when you're talking about the cost of living crisis right now, every little helps. You understand? And so if you are less likely to be diagnosed, you're less likely to have that support. And guess what? You're less likely to get the help that you need to get the jobs that you need. You understand? But there's not only issues within the ND community, there's also issues within that community itself. Do you understand? So, for example, within the Black community, there's less awareness of disability in general. So, which means that an inter um difficulties, but there's also intra difficulties as well, and that's what I'm trying to dispel. So, we're trying to increase awareness of intersectionality in society as a whole, but actually to educate the Black community to say, hold on, these conditions actually exist as well within our community. What can we do about it?
Got
In terms of edu- in terms of, like, for example, the education system and the prison population, for example, we have a lot of neuro minorities within the prison population, but we also have a lot of Black people within it, like, within the prison populations as well. We cannot be talking about solutions and having these situations in silos. We need to be thinking about how these things intersect and deal with these things together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and it's such an important part of our ecosystem, isn't it? That intersectionality around certain communities not having access to diagnosis, proper support in schools, and then as a consequence, not necessarily able to access employment in the same way as other groups would. And I guess neurodiversity is quite unique in that, isn't it? Because you've got sexuality, gender, ethnicity. and race actually all interplaying across the whole spectrum of ND?
Yeah, definitely. All these things, they they all intersect, and it's so important that we talk about all of these things and how they affect different people. Um, and but also when we talk about intersectionality, we need to understand that the way gender intersects with ND might be different between the way ethnicity intersects, and might be different between the way sexuality intersects. So it's so important that when we talk about intersectionality, we don't just lump each everything together, because that's quite a lazy way of approaching it.
Yeah, that's great. And through these discussions, I hope that we're raising that awareness. Can we also just talk about your ambitions for the future? Because it feels like 2022 has been quite a paradigm shift for neurodiversity. We've had a lot of focus on ND. It's getting talked about a lot more in society and definitely in the corporate world. Um, just get your magic wand out and tell me, what would you like to see in a year and 10 years time? What progress do you think we should be aiming for?
I think the progress that I want to see within the ND community is the fact that we're not like even having these conversations about how do ND um employees get into business, but we're talking about, okay, how do they become the next CEOs? How do they become climb up the corporate ladder? But also, as somebody who is of the Nigerian diaspora, I don't just want to see people in ND doing well in the UK, but these corporations that are part of ND business, they're global. They are global organizations. So for me, it's like, okay, let's now talk about what do inspiring and the ND workforce in India look like. What does that look like in China? What does that look like in South America, in South Africa, for example, in Nigeria? These ND is a global issue, and we need to. And I believe that ND in business has a incredible role to play in that, because we're working with some of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we share that same ambition. And I think the vision for neurodiversity in business is to demonstrate that actually initially this can be done with the organizations who are involved. But there's such a big untapped potential, isn't there, in those big population centres who are arguably some years behind where we are in the UK and Europe.
Definitely. And I think another goal that I would love to see with Indian business is to work with the smaller businesses as well. So not just large corporates, but actually, we don't want to create a culture where smaller businesses say, okay, it's not my responsibility because I don't have the budget, but actually to show them that it's actually for every business economic advantage to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, you're right. Because what we know in the UK, for example, is that the beating heart of the UK economy is not necessarily those big global multinationals. It's actually the medium and small size enterprises, the
Yes,
SMEs, and we're acutely conscious of this. And I know we've had a really good debate in our co-production board previously, but we're very cognizant of the fact that. What we don't want to be doing is disenfranchising certain groups, either the kind of the medium-sized organisations who just see the focus on the big corporates, but then equally importantly, those small ND advocacy groups or trainers or consultants who have spent years and years of building up their kind of network and their business model, etc. We want to be amplifying those voices and enabling them to get access to the big corporates.
yeah.
We're just always challenging ourselves on who is not in the room. And it's quite easy to think, oh gosh, we've done a great job, we've got great people around us, but we always need to be thinking, don't we? Who's not in the room and why are they not in the room? How do we bring them into this kind of collective?
It's so important. On the topic of who's not in the room, I was so happy to be at the launch and see that there was other people from other ethnic groups who were in the room. But we need more representation. And it was so good to see more women, Man, I don't know the demographics in terms of sexuality because it's hard to see that, but it's good to see a diversity of people, a diversity of thought that at the launch, which was incredible to see.
Yeah, we were really pleased, and not just pleased, but it enabled us to actually kind of understand the topic more holistically.
Yeah.
So you talked about the launch. So just give us a few highlights. What did you most enjoy about the launch at Parliament?
For me, it was great just to be there. I've never been in Parliament before, and it was just, for me, that was the first time I saw people like Nancy. So since I've launched um the Black Dyspraxic, I've kind of developed some good relationships with people like with Nancy, people like Onye. There was some people in the ND community that like Akua, for example, or
Sure.
even Professor Amanda Kirby. That it was just good to see them. It was good to see you as well for the first time, and I really do believe that this is not just a charity that we're building or an ecosystem, but we're building a community, a family that is ready to make the change that needs to be and we're trailblazing. We're setting a trail for other people in the ND community in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. My child is likely to be part of the ND community. I don't have a child yet, but they're likely to be just because of genetics, and it's good to see that we're doing things for that person who's that child who's yet to be conceived.
Great, great.
Um,
Well, so
One of the other things I wanted to just to talk about is because I know there was a bit of a debate on the launch on social media about decolonizing, and people were a bit scared of, okay, you're getting all these corporates in Westminster, and there was just a lot of um talk on social media about okay, a lot of scare and anxiety, and I just want to speak into that. I feel like ending business, um we have to follow the decade. We have to follow where we are as a um, as a society. Like at the beginning of this decade, corporates acknowledged that Black Lives Matter. This like a few years ago. Now this year, they're acknowledging that neurodiversity matters. It's going to take some time, but we just need to show them that intersectionality matters. And I would just encourage anybody that's listening to this podcast to be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, give you an example, like the civil rights advocate, like Martin Luther King. He did so much stuff in the '60s, so many great stuff, but still George Floyd happened 50 years after,
mm,
and we're not ending business is not there to wave a magic wand. It's gonna take work. It's gonna take hard stuff. So I'm gonna encourage people that instead of criticizing and tweeting like that, see how you can get involved and see how you can. We need your suggestions. And this is not an exclusive club. It's about making the world a better place for the whole entire ND community.
great. Well, I think those are great sentiments, and I would echo them. And I'm going to steal your comment shamelessly that we are a family, right? We are trying to change the world. We're trying to make society understand that if corporates can lead on neurodiversity, society as a whole should be more neuro inclusive. And Tumi, thank you for all your insight. I always learn a lot from talking to you. I genuinely do, and I enjoy our conversations. If we get kind of requests in from our membership to talk to you on this topic again, would you be happy to do so?
Yes, definitely.
Excellent, great. All right. Well, that was a really insightful conversation. Again, Tumi, thank you for your time and input here. Please do follow Tumi on social media, the Black Dyspraxic, and all of us at Neurodiversity in Business welcome all of your input, your insight, and let's continue to drive forward this agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.